lonely CEO bought dinner for a homeless family. He froze when the child left something on his table. The snow had been falling since early afternoon, dusting the streets of Boston with a thin layer of white that muffled the usual city sounds. It was the kind of evening that made people hurry home. Collars turned up against the cold, breath visible in small clouds as they rushed past the warm glow of restaurant windows. Michael Warren sat alone at his usual corner table at Rossi's, a modest Italian restaurant tucked between a bookshop and a pharmacy on Newbury Street. The exposed brick walls and soft candlelight gave the place a warmth that his penthouse apartment, 30 floors above the city, had never quite managed to achieve. He was 54 years old, though the silver threading through his dark hair made him look distinguished rather than aged. His charcoal suit was impeccably tailored, the kind of clothing that spoke of success without shouting it. But tonight, as he sat with an untouched glass of red wine, the weight of that success felt heavier than usual. It was December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. Michael had built Warren Technologies from the ground up, turning a small software startup into a company that employed over 3,000 people. The business magazines called him visionary. His board called him reliable. His competitors called him formidable. But tonight, in this quiet restaurant, he was simply alone. His phone buzzed. Another text from his assistant, confirming tomorrow's schedule. He set it face down on the table and looked out the frosted window at the people passing by, all of them heading somewhere, heading to someone. That's when he saw them. A young woman stood just outside the restaurant, trying to shelter a small child from the wind. The woman wore a tan coat that had seen better seasons, thin and insufficient for a Boston winter. Her blonde hair was pulled back, strands escaping in the wind. She couldn't have been more than 30. The child, a little girl with golden curls, pressed close to her mother's legs, wearing a pink coat that was clearly too thin for the weather. Even from inside, Michael could see the girl shivering. The woman was looking at the menu posted outside Rossi's window. Not the way people usually looked at menus, comparing options and deciding between pasta and risotto. She was looking at it the way someone looks at something they can't have, with a kind of quiet longing that Michael recognized from somewhere deep in his own past. He watched as the woman bent down, saying something to the child. The little girl nodded, and they turned to walk away deeper into the cold evening. Michael didn't think. He simply moved. He was out the door before he'd consciously decided to stand, the December air hitting him like a slap after the warmth inside. "Excuse me," he called out. The woman turned, instinctively pulling her daughter closer. Her eyes held a wariness that made Michael's heart ache, the look of someone who had learned to be careful in the world. "I'm sorry," Michael said quickly, softening his voice. "I didn't mean to startle you. I noticed you looking at the restaurant, and I wondered if you and your daughter might join me for dinner. I have a table inside, and honestly, I could use the company." The woman studied him for a long moment. Michael could see her weighing the offer, looking for the catch, the ulterior motive. He understood. In her position, he would have been cautious too. "It's warm inside," he added gently, "and the pasta is very good." The little girl tugged on her mother's hand. "Mama, I'm cold." Something in the woman's expression shifted. Pride warred with need, and need won. That's very kind of you," she said quietly. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Michael said, and he was. Inside Rossi's, the warmth enveloped them. Michael led them to his table, pulling out chairs and signaling to Maria, the waitress who had been serving him every Thursday evening for the past 5 years. "Maria, could we get 2 more place settings, please? And perhaps some hot chocolate for the little one." "Of course, Mr. Warren," Maria smiled, a knowing look in her eyes that suggested she approved. As they settled in, Michael extended his hand across the table. "I'm Michael." The woman hesitated only briefly before shaking it. Her hand was cold. "I'm Sarah, and this is Emma." Emma had climbed into her chair and was looking around the restaurant with wide eyes, taking in the candles, the soft music, the other diners in their nice clothes. She was perhaps 3 or 4 years old, with her mother's delicate features and eyes that sparkled with curiosity. Despite the hard evening she'd clearly endured. "Hi, Emma," Michael said, smiling at her. "I'm very glad you could join me for dinner." Emma looked at her mother, then back at Michael. "You have a pretty smile," she announced. Sarah's cheeks flushed. "Emma, that's—" "Thank you, Emma," Michael said, his smile widening. "You have a pretty smile too." The menus came, and Michael watched as Sarah tried to gravitate toward the cheapest items, her finger hovering over the soup and salad combinations. "The chicken parmesan is excellent," he said casually. "And Emma might like the butter noodles. Very simple, very good. Please order whatever sounds good. I insist." Over the next hour, as warm food arrived and the chill gradually left Sarah's and Emma's cheeks, the story emerged in small pieces. Sarah had been a paralegal in New Hampshire. When her husband left 2 years ago, she'd tried to make it work. But the rent kept climbing and the childcare costs were impossible. She'd come to Boston 3 weeks ago, hoping the bigger city meant more opportunities. She talked quietly, carefully, the way people do when they're used to keeping their struggles private. But as Emma colored on the paper placemat with crayons, Maria had thoughtfully brought Sarah seam to. "Relax, just a little. We've been staying at the shelter on Columbus Avenue," she said. "They've been wonderful, really, but it's full most nights." And Emma, she trailed off, looking at her daughter with an expression that Michael recognized. Love, fierce and protective, mixed with fear and exhaustion. "She deserves better than this," Sarah finished quietly. Michael nodded. He knew something about that, about wanting better for someone you loved, about the weight of responsibility and the fear of failure. "You're a good mother," he said simply. "Emma is lucky to have you." Sarah's eyes glistened, and she looked away, blinking rapidly. "Thank you," she whispered. As they ate, Emma chattered. Between bites, about the Christmas decorations she'd seen in store windows, about the big tree at the common, about how she'd asked Santa for a baby doll, but knew he might be too busy this year. Michael listened, struck by the child's resilience, her ability to find wonder despite everything. "Do you have kids?" Emma asked suddenly, with that unfiltered directness only small children possess. Michael set down his fork slowly. "No," he said. "I don't." "Why not?" "Emma," Sarah said softly, but Michael shook his head. "It's okay." He looked at the little girl. "I was always very busy with work. Too busy, maybe. I thought there would be time later, but, well, life doesn't always work out the way we plan." Emma considered this seriously. "That's sad." "Yes," Michael agreed. "Sometimes it is." The moment hung there, honest and unadorned. As the meal wound down and Maria brought complimentary tiramisu to the table, Michael found himself not wanting the evening to end. For the first time in months, maybe years, he felt connected to something beyond spreadsheets and board meetings. When the check came, he paid it quietly while Sarah was helping Emma wash her hands in the restroom. Then he did something else. He pulled out his business card, wrote something on the back, and folded $200 bills inside a napkin. Sarah and Emma returned, Emma's curls slightly damp, her cheeks pink and full from the good meal. "Thank you," Sarah said. And Michael could hear everything she wasn't saying in those 2 words. "Thank you for the meal. Thank you for treating us with dignity. Thank you for seeing us as people. Thank you for the company," Michael replied. "This was the nicest evening I've had in a long time." As they prepared to leave, bundling back into their thin coats, Emma suddenly darted back to the table. She picked up the small toy that came with her hot chocolate, a tiny plastic reindeer, and placed it carefully beside Michael's wine glass. "For you," she said solemnly, "so you won't be lonely." Michael looked down at the little toy, then at the child standing before him with such earnest generosity, offering him the only thing she had. Something cracked open in his chest. "Thank you, Emma," he managed. "I'll treasure it." Emma beamed, then ran back to her mother. Sarah mouthed another silent thank you, and then they were gone, disappearing into the snowy evening. Michael sat back down, staring at the plastic reindeer. He picked it up, turning it over in his hands, and something caught his eye. There was writing on it. He squinted in the candlelight. It wasn't printed. It was handwritten in tiny letters, clearly done with a very fine pen. He recognized Sarah's handwriting from the paper placemat Emma had colored on. Warren Technologies, we believed in your vision. You gave my husband a job when no one else would. He's the one who left, not your company. You changed our lives once. Tonight you did it again. Sarah Mitchell. Michael sat very still. Sarah Mitchell. The name tugged at his memory. He pulled out his phone, opened his contacts, scrolled back through old emails. And then he found it. James Mitchell. Hired 5 years ago as a junior developer. Good employee, quiet, reliable. But Michael had laid off 20% of his workforce during the restructuring 2 years ago, trying to save the company during a difficult quarter. James had been one of them. Michael had never known what happened to those people after. He'd made the decision from his office, approved the list his CFO had prepared, and moved forward. That's what CEOs did. That's what he told himself. But here was what happened. Here was a face, a name, a woman and child struggling because of a decision he'd made from behind a desk, thinking only about numbers and quarterly projections. The weight of it pressed down on him. But there was also something else. Sarah could have been angry. She could have confronted him, blamed him, asked for more than dinner. Instead, she'd thanked him. She'd acknowledged that he'd given her husband a chance once. She'd recognized that sometimes life is complicated, that business decisions affect real people, but that kindness still matters. And Emma, with her plastic reindeer and her innocent generosity, had given him something priceless, a reminder that connection matters more than success, that being alone at the top of a building isn't the same as being alive. Michael sat in that restaurant for another hour after Sarah and Emma left. He made phone calls. He sent emails. He used resources that success had given him, resources he'd almost forgotten could be used for something beyond profit margins. By the time he finally left Rossi's that night, the snow had stopped and the city sparkled under street lamps. He carried the plastic reindeer carefully in his pocket, a talisman, a reminder. 2 days later, on Christmas morning, Sarah received a call from Warren Technologies' HR department. There was a position available, a paralegal position in their growing legal division. Full benefits, good salary, and a company-subsidized childcare program. If she was interested, could she come in after the holidays? She was interested, but that wasn't all. Michael had done something else too. He'd established a fund at Warren Technologies, a safety net for employees who found themselves in transition. Not just severance pay, but genuine support, job placement assistance, temporary housing help, counseling services. He called it the Emma Fund, though he never told anyone why. And on his desk, in his office on the 30th floor, the little plastic reindeer sat beside his computer, where every executive decision he made would be witnessed by a child's gift, reminding him of what really mattered. Some encounters last only an evening, others change the direction of a life. Michael Warren had bought dinner for a homeless family, expecting to give them a warm meal on a cold night. Instead, they'd given him something far more valuable, a reminder that success without connection is just another form of poverty, and that the most important numbers aren't in quarterly reports. They're in the people whose lives we touch, for better or worse. That small plastic reindeer taught him what years of business school never could. We're all in this together, and sometimes the smallest gesture of kindness can save someone who didn't even know they needed saving. If this story touched your heart, I'd be grateful if you'd take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Subscribe to the channel for more stories about the quiet moments that change us. And leave a comment below. I'd love to hear about a time when a stranger's kindness made a difference in your life. Thank you for listening, and may you find both warmth and connection this season.